Yeah, we're at 400 right now, so let's jump into it. Cool. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. For those of you who've been on the call, we've been shooting the shit about the background stuff, but we both, Richard and I, are super fired up for this one because, we didn't do a ton of promo on this, right? And we got 2,500 people signed up. So, and I'm personally excited about this one because Richard and I haven't caught up in a little while as far as content is concerned. And Richard's been doing some interesting shit. Actually, I'm not going to name the company, but Richard actually won a deal, beat us head to head on a deal specifically as it relates to cold calling, and a logo that is one that everybody would know. So first of all, congrats on that one.
Thank you.
But yeah, like Richard, you want to kind of give a little bit of your perspective on what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, I'm really excited too. And I mean, John and I text offline a lot and talk offline, but I'm super excited to talk about cold calling because it is one of the things that you can actually control. You have so much control in your sales world and so much you can't control. And this is one thing that you can control if you allow yourself to focus on it. And so I'm really excited to talk about these different thoughts and strategies. And John, you don't even know this yet. Nobody knows I've brought a couple of guests along with us to give some opinions. So when the time's right, they might barge in. So I'll let you know.
Nice. Yeah, my guest is in school right now, so she's selling books. So
well, my guests that's not who's in school. Yeah, I got it. You'll
okay, all right, cool. Well, let's dive into this because I don't like, for those of you who don't know us, whatever, look us up on LinkedIn. But let's get into this. Let's answer this question, Richard. Cold calling dead, because everybody I still see this on LinkedIn and it kind of bothers me. But your answer, and I'll give you mine.
Yeah. So actually, this is the one where I have a special guest, and our special guest today is Lil Keenan. Lil Keenan. I talked to Keenan about this, and this is what Keenan had to say. He's like, "Are you kidding me? Is this still a question? Are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous. Of course, cold calling is not dead. You absolutely have to keep cold calling. You know what's dead is the shitty attitude people have about cold calling. That's what it is. Anyway, peace. I'm out, John. I got to go get me a Red Bull. Go Pats. TB12.
I love it. Yeah, I was going to say there should be a few more F-bombs in there.
I'm trying to, I'm trying to mind myself there, but
By the way, I'm going to say this straight up, just for expectation setting for everybody. If you are going to get offended by F-bombs and foul language, please get off right now. I don't want to hear anybody be like, "Oh, they fucking swore too much," and blah blah blah. It is what it is, so suck it. All right. So, anyways, my thing on cold calling is like, of course it's not dead. Well, let's put it this way. This webinar proves that cold calling isn't dead. We barely promoted this shit, and 2,500 people lit up the fucking lights on this one, right? So obviously, and we can run through data. I mean, I think this, by the way, this is also not going to be a webinar filled with statistics about why it's important and any bullshit like that. Like, it's part of the process. We got to do it. And let me just make one point in this regard as far as cold calling. To Richard's point, it is the one thing you can't control, and it's the one thing right now from a prospecting standpoint that isn't automated by technology.
Yep.
So I'm personally watching all these kids out there playing with all these tools like SalesLoft, Cadence tools, and that type of shit, and they're literally press and play. And I'm going to tell you right now, I actually scare the shit out of a lot of SDR organizations, because I walk into them and I say, look, if I was a new VP of sales walking into a new sales organization, the first thing that I would do is I would say, look, I want to see every single one of the emails that are going out by the sales reps right now. Every one of them. I want to watch every one of them. And if they were all template bullshit Cadence emails, I would say, you know what? I'm going to save this company the whole shitload of money right out of the gate. I'm going to fire every SDR in here. I'm going to hire somebody from Marketo or Eloqua or Pardot, pick one of the marketing automation tools, optimize the shit out of that, and then run, right? And you know what? Maybe I'll sign up for InsideSales.com and I'll come up with a really kick-ass voicemail, and I'll just dump that into people's voicemails when they pick it up.
Yep.
I do not need sales reps to do that shit. You know what I need sales reps to do? Make some goddamn phone calls.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's great. And I got one more guest for you. It's not Lil Keenan though. This is Lil Trish Bertuzzi. So Lil Trish Bertuzzi says, John, you're right. We absolutely have to keep cold calling. It's what I did. I know it sounds like a 70s or 80s or a 90s thing, but it still works. And it's not the scripts that's bad. Well, part of it is that, but it's still the attitude. And then people give them bad scripts because they don't have good leadership who know how to actually do cold calling. Most sales leaders got promoted not because they knew how to do good scripts, but they got promoted because they were good at selling. They were content people. They were not script people. All right, that's it for little Trish. So,
and I love it, and I think the excuse, that's the excuse, right? So
right.
So talk about the excuses here, because you hear them, I hear them.
Yeah, I hear it. I call it the excuse factory, right? Everybody, the excuses run the gambit of I don't like it, they make me nervous, to it doesn't work in our industry, right? That's my favorite one. I'm like, great, let's jump on the phone. I'll crush it right now with you, and I will get on the phone and I will use it. And I know we're going to move into this, but I will move into one of my scripts and it crushes every single time, right? I'll wait till we get there, but we'll talk a little bit about scripting in a minute. So,
yeah, well, I mean, and I do agree. Look, a lot of any communication, email, phone, social, any of that stuff, right? I think a lot of it is determined on your ICP and the personas that you go after. So yes. I'm going to put a caveat here on there are some industries that or personas that you're calling into that literally don't even have phones anymore. You know what I mean? Like sure. Developers. Like if you're calling into analysts and developers and those type of things, like it's like to go through a phone tree to find somebody who actually has a pulse, that to a certain degree is a waste of time. Mm-hmm. But if you're in a reasonably, open industry that isn't like that type of thing where people are just literally hiding and don't want to talk at all on the phones, phone is still a component and a very important component of the sales process. And I will throw one stat out there because it's my stat. It's not one that I read off a piece of paper and sounds important. We actually ran 2 cadences, and we did one cadence with pure emails and then one cadence with emails with calls and voicemails. And just with the voicemails alone, forget about the live connect component of it, there was a 13% increase in the conversion ratio when we left a voicemail, right? So that's why people ask, like, John, should I leave a voicemail? Absolutely. First of all, as long as you have something to say, as long as you have a reason, right?
Right.
And I don't leave voicemails because I expect callbacks. I leave voicemails because my email response rates go up when I leave voicemails, period.
Yep. It's a part of this tool, right? Like that's part of it. I do want to bring up one other excuse that I hear, and this one's probably the most legitimate excuse that I hear about cold calling. And it's quite simply not the rep's fault. So to all the reps who are out there, all the millennials who are out there, this is not your fault. It's your manager's fault. Mm-hmm. Bad data. Yep. Bad data is ridiculous. It is 2019, almost 2020. And if you fucking still can't go and buy decent quality data, then shame on you, right? And shame on you executives for sort of throwing out those other stupid statistics like 100 calls a day. You know what? Come fucking down here and you make 100 calls a day. Show me how to do it, right? That stuff bugs the shit out of me. If you can't go out and get quality data, if you expect your team to sit there and hunt data and do data entry, then you clearly have no clue understanding what it takes to be in sales. Right. And I get it. Like if you're an early stage startup and you can't afford to go out and buy the ZoomInfos of the world. Right. And well, I guess it's now DiscoverOrg is now ZoomInfo. I get it. I understand. But even still, there are other ways you can optimize that process for finding those phone numbers and that contact information, and making your reps do it is just simply stupid. So.
Yeah, and actually, you know what, and we'll talk about techniques a little bit later, you can actually do this now. You can cold call through LinkedIn at this point. Like you can at least leave messages through LinkedIn if you're connected to them. So there's really no excuse not to at least give it a shot. I will say, I do think that we are in a transition phase right now. And this is for everybody out there, just my opinion here is that you and I grew up, Richard. I'm 43. I forget how old you're around the same age, right?
Yeah. Right around.
So we grew
up. I turned 50 this year and I look fucking good and I'm proud of it. So
good for that. But when we were in sales, like it was a pure numbers game. It was, I knew my equation. I had $50. It was $400 a week, got me 8 meetings a month, got me 4 proposals, got me that whole thing. Yep. And so it was, but now it's weird because I think everybody understands that quality is the answer. Like you have like account-based marketing and everybody kind of understands quality is the answer. But to your point about managers being lazy, it's hard to manage on quality. It's hard to coach quality. right? Especially as managers. And I'm going to give managers a little bit of a pass here because they almost never get the tools and the resources they need to be effective. And they're always being asked to do a billion different things. So coaching, even though it's one of the most important things that they can do, it's one of the likely things that will happen because of all the other things they're being asked to do. But so it's hard to coach on quality, or find the time to coach on quality. It's really easy to coach on hit your fucking numbers. You know what I mean? Make 50 dials a day, because that's a very specific number that I can yell at a rep for. And if you don't hit your numbers, it's not my fault, because it doesn't matter about the quality of the list. It doesn't matter about the quality. If you don't do your activities, you're in trouble. So that, I do think we're in a transition phase right now of that becoming less and less, like the pure volume being less and less of a priority, but it's still right now we're in that transition phase where it's a little rough.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of transitions in addition to the data quality. Is that, understanding what it takes to be an inside rep is very different. And I also think, there's a lot of jealousy in managing.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I love, this is my favorite thing, is that it's not the millennials' fault. Millennials, it's never been your fault. It's your manager's fault. I'm 50, and I can assure you that everybody's got the same war story of, well, back in the day when I did this, I had to do. It's like, well, the only reason you did that is because nobody taught you something different, right? And it's almost like bad parenting. You do what you've been modeled to do, right? So, and I had to go through this. Like, as a manager, I had to kind of realize this, before I went on my own, that what's happening is the Gen X generation, who's running a lot of the leadership stuff, and I'm seeing the transition now, which is great. They're jealous of what the millennials expect because we didn't get it. We didn't get that level of love and support from our managers. I was a latchkey kid. Of course, my parents loved me, but I didn't, I went through latchkey kid, divorced parent syndrome. Like, there's lots of people who know what that is, right? I had to figure shit out on my own. I know you and Morgan have talked about this a lot. And it was something you had to sort of grow, John, was like, okay, I got to manage Morgan, who's sort of used to being coached in a different way than I would have thought. And you guys figured it out and you worked it out. And so it is a 100%, and look, I'm not a doctor, so please, call me out on it if you want, but there's a ridiculous amount of jealousy and anger beneath the surface of what's causing this problem. And what my generation would have called micromanaging is what millennials call coaching, right? And it's different. Now, that doesn't mean you need to coach them to death and micromanage them after you've coached them. But that's the difference that I'm seeing a lot. And that shift is changing in several of those places.
Yeah, and actually it leads to the keynote that Morgan and I do is how Gen Xers and millennials can work together. And it actually leads to a debate you and I are going to have here in a minute, which is structure versus scripts. Right? Scripts versus structures. We're going to pause on that one because I think that's going to be the heavy debate here. I will say, I do want to address this. Neha Penke asked the question because getting live connects is a real challenge. I will say the one thing that I do notice right now, or the challenge that I'm hearing a lot, is just the connect rate alone. So the data's fine, all that other stuff, but it is evident that it is taking more phone calls to get live connects these days, which makes it all that much more important to be ready when that call picks up, right? Because I think we can get into this droned out, like just, okay, I'm making my dials, I'm making my dials, I'm making my dials. And then somebody picks up the phone and like, you're like, and you throw up all over yourself and you literally like shit your pants because you're like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody's alive there. And you just now, out of all that effort to find that needle in the haystack, you just screwed it because you weren't ready for it. So that's what we're really going to talk about here. But I will say, Neha, like what I would try to do as far as connect rates is, and this is the best answer I have for this, and Richard, I'd love yours, is just literally mix up the times you're calling, right? Like just call early in the morning, call at lunch. Never do a call blitz at the exact same time every day or every week. You have to mix it up to figure out where your audience and when your audience is going to be picking up the phones. Because I used to cold call really because I sold outsourced IT services, and I would call into executives, right? Like C-level executives in the mornings, like 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning is when I would get my highest connect rates because that's when they would be there. But when I was talking to IT people, I would call 6 to 8 at night actually. And so because the IT usually doesn't come in until later, they stay later, that type of thing. So like you have to mix it up. But any advice on the actual connect rates?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. So I wish the tools that are out there would do this, which is is that they would track the days and times of your pickups, right? When we have the Chorus, the Gong, the Sales Lofts, the Outreaches of the world, InsideSales.com, right? I'm trying to be agnostic to people. I really wish that they would show you, and reps would, or managers would go and pull the data, or sales ops to see when are our highest connect rates. I ran a call center years ago selling newspaper subscriptions, right? Hi, would you like to buy the Boston Globe? We actually sold the Boston Globe. And we knew that in Boston, which time of day to call, right? We knew that in Reno, Nevada, which was crazy, for some reason between 11 and 12, every day was the best time of day to call. It was also the hardest market because most people didn't want to renew their newspaper. But we didn't, and we couldn't even figure out why it was 11 to 12. Like, that's not the time you think, and we're calling people at home. Like, we're not calling businesses, right? So this is sort of where I think that next evolution is being able to track that. And we now have the data, in my opinion, in terms of being able to capture that connect rate. I have no idea if those tools are doing it yet. And if someone from those tools is listening, please start looking into that, because I think it will make the job better and easier for other people, which, for the reps who are actually on the front lines hitting this.
And one of the, just again, because we're going to sprinkle tactics all the way through this, one of my things that I really recommend everybody do is when you run your power hours, okay? So first of all, recommendation here, I walk into organizations sometimes and they have like call blitz days. Please, I beg you, do not have a call blitz day. Because I don't know about you, Richard, there ain't enough Red Bull out there to get me hyped up for a day's worth of cold calling, right? But if you do power hours, but the problem with power hours is most people, what they'll do is they'll just say, hey, bring your list. And then everybody kind of calls in all over the place and whatever, and people are searching for information, whatever. My power hours that we run is pick a persona that you're going after, come up with a message to that persona, 2 or 3 questions to that persona, and even we'll talk about later the objections that you're going to face there, and maybe even a case study that's a story you can tell, yep. And then run a list with all that same persona, and then call them all and say the same damn thing, right? Because then you can gain momentum. And especially if you have a team doing it, like 4, 5, 6 people doing it at the same time, you can actually start to really figure out what works and split test different approaches to find out time of day, persona, that type of thing. So anybody out there listening, when you run your call blitzes, stop just saying, hey, it's a call blitz and whoever wins, wins. Because another point on that is usually when you run a call blitz, there's some people that are just straight up better on the phone than others, right? And if I'm not that good and Sally is always on the top of the fucking leaderboard, you know what I mean? It's like, yay, good for you, Sally, right? I'm going to walk in and we're going to transition to this mindset here of like, I'm going to walk in with a defeated mindset. Like, this is going to suck. And with that defeated mindset, yes, it's going to suck. But if we come into the idea where, hey, we're trying out an approach to a persona, and we're all going to be trying it out with the same list of the same persona and those type of things, then it's not necessarily the individual that fails, it's the approach that fails.
Yeah, so here's how I see it. So there's a couple of things. So one, I'm actually going to come back and blame the managers. If you're being told to come in and just bring your list, to a certain extent, the rep needs to have some accountability to that and should be a little smarter than their manager at how to pull that list. But if the manager's just saying pull whoever, then that's on the manager, because nobody taught them how to do it. So, stop sort of doing the, well, I've set a blitz and do that. And I do like what you're saying. I would do it differently, slightly different. So what you're talking about from this A/B testing, I would say, hey, let's do a persona blitz for an hour today, right? Persona blitz is different than a call blitz.
Yeah.
Right? And to that point, that to me is where you do things differently. I don't necessarily disagree, I don't know that you should say, hey, we do a whole day of cold calling or power hours, but I have no problem doing it. And I've run it of saying for 4 hours today, we're doing cold calling. We're going to do an hour, take a break, do an hour, take a break, do an hour. And I have no problem getting teams to do that. And yeah, it's monotonous and we don't like it. But the other reason we don't like it is what's going on in the mind. And I'd love to sort of shift this conversation if I can, John, about what happens to your mind. Right. This is, and the reason one person's good or one person's bad or someone's just better on the phone, I don't buy that excuse anymore. I really don't. I've seen too much and taught too much to think that that's a legit excuse. What happens in your brain when you hear the word no, your brain goes into fight or flight mode. It happens to everybody, every single person in the world. Right. What's really happening is you're starting to release this cortisol in your brain. And that's what's happening. And if someone's smarter about this stuff, please chime in. And that cortisol puts you into sort of a slightly defensive, but hey, how do I get the fuck out of here mode, right? If you're, the best way to describe this is if you're a video game person and you're being chased, right? And you're like, I gotta get out of here, I gotta get out of here. Like, and your, you know, your wife would come in and say, hey, you need to take out the garbage. Like, you're not hearing it. Like, legitimately, your body is physiologically not capable of hearing it. So when we come in and do these call blitzes or cold calling, oftentimes the people who don't like it, they're already saying no in their head. And they're starting to release this cortisol, and it's already sort of starting to work against them in some ways, right? For those who don't have this problem, they either A, are just wired differently, which is totally possible. Every person's different. Every human is different. But it's also they built up that callus, right? Like, you imagine, like, John, if I say next week, John, you're starting for Tom Brady, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, sweet, give me the jersey, throw me in there. I guarantee you, when you walk up on that line, you're going to go, oh, shit. And you're going to have this cortisol release that, you know, when your wife calls you or your daughter, you know, says, hey, Dad, good luck, you may or may not hear them, right? Like, this is what's happening. And I'm sort of bringing it in an extreme way because it matters. It matters a lot. And it's not just this shut up and get on the phone. There's a reason why this isn't working. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, and I'll stop because I'll preach too much. Yep. The reason I'm bringing this up is because but just by acknowledging it for people creates a label in your mind that, oh, wait a minute, that's normal. I get it. That's what's happening to me. Now that I understand that, maybe I can help control myself a little better. Maybe I can be a little bit more relaxed. Doesn't mean you're going to be relaxed. I get on cold calls. I still get nervous. Like, that happens. But I've taught myself to do things, right? It's also one of the reasons I meditate. Meditation relaxes the body entirely, right? It totally changes you, and in a very relaxed way. So things that are super stressful become less stressful. So that's just one piece of this on what's happening in your mind. And I want people to understand that a little bit.
And I think you're spot on. I think in this way, we're going to kind of switch to this as far as what you need to do to prepare, right? To be effective in cold calling. And the mentality is a big piece of that. Is that if you just kind of like, oh, I'm doing my thing, I'm doing my emails and whatever. Oh, now it's a call blitz. I got to, you know, I have to shift my brain now to focus on that. Good luck. You know what I mean? But like, to your point, I kind of go by the, I don't know if it was Abraham Lincoln or whatever it is, you know, if I had to sit 4 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 3 hours sharpening my axe, right?
Right.
I think the big problem when going into a cold call blitz, and I want to make sure we're clear on this. Somebody asked, John, I'm still a little confused on the personal call blitz. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a persona-driven call blitz. Personal call blitz, that's a little bit challenging. That is, yes, you need to do a little bit of research on somebody, and we'll talk about how to do that efficiently. But that is, okay, I'm going to go on their LinkedIn profile. I'm going to go check out their website for like 3 seconds, you know, go Steve Richards 3x3 thing. And we'll get into, you know, we'll go into details of that. But that is, hey, I'm calling you, Richard. Hey, Richard, I saw your recent post on LinkedIn where you talked about this, and I'd like to talk to you about it. That's a strategic call blitz of personal stuff that takes a little bit extra time. But when you're talking about like a power hour, what we're saying is the best results I've seen is when you pick a persona, so CIOs in healthcare, and you come up with your message about what you do for CIOs in healthcare and what that sounds like, and then what your questions are in there, and then you run a list of CIOs in healthcare and you call them all up and say the same thing, right? Because now, again, like, I'm not good. I don't know about you, Richard, but I am not good enough to call a CIO in the healthcare industry, a director of IT in the manufacturing industry, a VP of sales in the health, and have relevant, good conversations with each of them. I'm just not that bright. I don't have that much brain capacity. But if I call every CIO, right, exactly.
And even if you are that bright, why would you?
Well, I mean, I guess if you're really that good on your feet, right, to be tailored in that, but what that does is that inherently forces a generic approach. You inherently have to give your piece of shit elevator pitch. You inherently have to ask generic questions or say stuff like, tell me about your priorities, or, you know, that type of crap.
What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, what keeps you up at night? And
stop saying that. I had to interrupt my Red Bull. Stop asking people what keeps them up at night. Right? Fucking ridiculous. Stop it. Sorry.
So, and this goes back to mentality. Like, I really do think you have to have the right mentality. If you walk into a shitty call blitz saying this is going to be if you walk into a call blitz thinking this is going to be a shitty call blitz, it's going to be a shitty call blitz.
Yeah.
But if you walk in, and that's why I promote like power hours, because it's a beginning and an end. And again, no matter how bad of a day, I can do my Tony Robbins, change my state, and get into a different mentality for that. And then I get all my prep work done so that when I'm doing calls, I can gain momentum and learn something and have a much better attitude. And then we'll stand up, like stand up and have some energy when making these calls, because your voice resonates better this way. This is a much more confident position. So anything else that you have on mentality of how you need to make sure you're in a really good position mentally prepared to have an effective list, call blitz.
Are you asking me what I think we need to do in the mentality world? So we're going to get to this, and tell me if you want to talk about it now, but I think a script matters, right? You got to know what you're going to say, right? And your value proposition is just a part of that script. I think so knowing that is really important. I have a question back for you though.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do a power hour, right?
Yep.
How much prep time should my team spend putting the list together, doing all this? Like, what's that look like, right? So is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour? If I'm a leader, if I'm a manager, and please, some other people, if you're doing this, I know our chat box is going crazy, which is awesome. Please share what you guys do in terms of how much prep you give your team, because I think that's kind of really important. We just think it's from 9 to 10, and we don't think about what we got to do from 8 to 9.
Right. I personally, again, I think a lot of this has to do with the quality, like the tools and the resources that people have at their disposal. I think a half an hour, if you have some reasonable tools with some reasonable, I think a half an hour is good enough, right? Because you get your message down, you get a list of names with decent numbers, you kind of think through, maybe do a little bit of homework on that persona so you can have some talking points around it, right? So I think a half hour is a minimum that I would prepare for an hour-long call blitz. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a lot of good data and you do have to you have to look for people to sell to, I think you're probably going to do an hour for an hour. But during that hour, because you can get really efficient with your research if you do it all at the same time. I think what kills time management is when somebody makes a phone call, looks for research, sends an email, makes a phone call, writes an email, that murders time management. Because if I were to tell you this right now, right, a lot of people out there listening, so 50 dials is kind of the benchmark, right? 50 dials a day.
That's still high.
I know, but if you tell me make 50 dials a day and I have to sprinkle them throughout the day, that's actually a damn hard number to hit. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard for me to hit 50 dials in a day if I'm making a phone call, sending an email, doing research, writing a proposal, making a phone call, that type of thing. But if you do a half-hour prep for a 1 hour call blitz and you're hyper-focused, you should be able to get through 20, 25 dials in an hour, no problem. And that's with some decent conversations, right? So you got an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon, that's 50 dials. And then you got 5 hours, 6 hours left to do whatever else you want to do with.
Yeah, here's a tip that I learned from somebody else, and I know it's going to be less than 30 minutes, but if we're talking a little bit about time management, I can't remember her name, but I did a webinar with her, and it was a great advice. If you schedule, not even schedule, but if you say, I'm going to do this for 15 minutes and turn your phone off and just focus on that one task, you'd be shocked how much you can get done in 15 minutes.
Actually, I think you should do, I don't think you should turn your phone off. This is exactly what I do, by the way, when I do my research or when I do my prep for anything. So let's talk a little bit now about, like, if I'm researching an account, right? A lot of people get lost in research, okay? They, like, all of a sudden, a half an hour later, they haven't found anything or whatever. And the reason for that is human nature is, if I gave you 30 minutes, Richard, like if I said, when we do our trainings and I say, all right, everybody, open up your laptops, pick an account you want to get into and do research, find something to say. Human nature, we would all be looking for the perfect thing to say, right? Because it's like, oh, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Oh, there it is, right? But what I do is I actually take my phone and I put the timer on it and I put 10 minutes and I actually stick it right in front of me. So it's actually a countdown. So I'm like looking at it going, oh shit. What happens there is when you do your research, you go from looking for the perfect thing to looking for anything. And you get really efficient with doing it. So that's why I actually recommend you actually take the time to time yourself on the preparation. And then at the end of the day, okay, you got enough. Let's get after it. Right.
Cool. No, I agree. So
let's talk about, we hit on time blocks, right? So are you an advocate of hours? Is it, you said hour break? Is that pretty much your MO?
Yeah, I mean, I work with the client, right? Because I do need to understand what else needs to get done that day when they're asking me to do it. But I do really sit down and structure it and say, here's my best practice, and let's go make it happen. To coin the phrase, to borrow the phrase, I should say, I can't coin that phrase. But just like LeBron can't get Taco Tuesday. But anyway, I think that really helps. And I can tell you, I've done call blitzes, and I've done call blitzes where, for 2 hours on a Friday between 1 and 3 calling IT people, we set 13 appointments.
Yeah.
That's not bad, right?
Yeah.
Like that's pretty good in about 2 hours on a Friday calling IT. We had about 18 people in the room, so not quite one per person, but it works. And I think you have to be willing to try it. And you have to have a good process and plan around it at the management level and at the rep level. And I do think, and I absolutely 100%, and all the managers on the call are going to hate me, you need to get on the phone and be a part of the blitz.
100%. 100%.
You've got to do this. You want to talk about mentality? That will do amazing things for the mentality of your team, right? Challenge them.
Quick story on that one. When I sold my first company to Staples, and then I started at Basho, I had a manager, and so I was just a little. I wasn't an executive anymore. I had to sit, and we had a call blitz every Friday afternoon. And I remember vividly my boss coming in and barking at us because I didn't want to do it. I was shooting the shit with the guy next to me, and whatever. My boss comes in, is like, "Hey, Barrows, how many cold calls you make today?" And I turned to him, and this is why I work for myself, because I'm that big of a pain in the ass. I turned to him and I said, "I don't know, how many fucking cold calls did you make today?" Right now, that was a fireable offense, no question about it. But my point was, I had never seen him make a cold call. Now, fast forward the next week, my cube was here, and he was there in his office, and he had his door open, and he put his headset on, and he started making calls. And Richard, when I tell you, I was so impressed with the quality of his ability to make cold calls. I was looking over at him, and within 5 calls of him making cold calls, I was like, oh shit. Put on my headset and went to work. And so if you want your team to make calls, go make calls.
Absolutely.
And also you got to get the environment right. Like, this is why I hate the open office environment. I like it for collaboration and teamwork and shit like that. I can't stand it for phone, because even if you want to get after it, say you're the only one, say you you know what, I'm going to get after it today on the phones, but you're the only one on the phone. It feels like everybody in the office is listening to every single word that's coming out.
What do you want them to do? How do you want them to each have their own booth?
No, what I want them to do is to do call blitzes together as teams in a cycle, so that they're learning from each other. Because going back to the persona-driven message, if you, me, and Chris and a few other people are all making calls in this area to the same persona with the same message, not only is the vibe there, and I don't feel like I'm an outcast, right? And everybody's looking at me, but I'm picking up on the way that you said shit. And I'll be like, ooh, I like the way you phrase that, Richard. You know what? Let me change. I'm going to try that approach, right? So it feeds off of.
I completely disagree with that.
Really?
Yes. So first of all, I agree with you putting everybody together. I love putting everybody in a conference room so that nobody's in their desk, right? And you're right. When someone picks up the phone and they get into a conversation, everyone else sort of starts to dial back and listen, because you want them to learn and you want them to hear those things, right? But the challenge is that if you're trying to change too much, because what worked for Sarah doesn't work for Bob, right? For lots of different reasons. When Bob tries it, he's going to fail miserably, right? This is one of the reasons I like scripts, because I know that the scripts work, because I've tested them and I've had teams test them, and we'll keep jumping into those 3. But I'm telling you, stealing a little here, stealing a little there often creates a really bad stew. Right? It works sometimes, but for me, I don't see that working. And I don't want people to necessarily steal stuff just because it worked for so-and-so, right?
I don't necessarily think of stealing. I look at it as like picking up.
It's not stealing. I agree.
Yeah, I know. But I think more about how you phrase something, right?
Yeah, I get it.
That's the script versus structure conversation. Scripts, we are all saying the exact same thing to the exact same person, even the tonality and everything else, this is it, right? And then we're all robots.
Nope,
I like it.
Are we ready to have this conversation? Because I'm ready.
Yeah. Let's fuck it. Let's go to this. Hold on a second. Nope, that's objections. Yeah, scripts versus structure.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me why, literally a script, everybody, 15 people, all reading off the same script, word for word. Tell me why that's awesome.
Absolutely, because they work, right? So here's the first one. The first one's called Yes, Yes, Yes. John, role play with me. Ring, ring.
Hey, this is John.
Hey, John. Hey, you're still over. You're still the owner over at Barrows Consulting, right?
Yeah.
Right, and you're located in Boston, right?
Yeah. What do you want?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for taking the call. Look, the reason I'm calling today is that I've got a very unique and breakthrough approach to helping you solve your cold call problem. I really just want to take 5 minutes to see if we can set some time on your calendar. What's your calendar look like the next Tuesday?
Dude, I don't know. I'd like 5 minutes, really. That's what you need. I got 5 minutes now. What?
Right, you want 5 minutes now?
Yeah, go. You
Great,
caught me.
awesome. Let's
What?
go. Guess what, John? My script just worked.
So the reason, so
So let me tell you why it works, right?
that's your, but okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Yeah. So the reason this works is, one, you're helping to avoid John from saying and hearing in his head the word no too much. I started with the yeses. It's not like
There's psychology around this one. Bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on you, Richard, right now.
absolutely works.
Talk to Chris Voss. Talk to fucking anybody. The getting yes book is bullshit. You want to get people to say no first.
No, I disagree. That only works if you're comfortable hearing no. If you're not comfortable hearing no, then that doesn't work.
It's not for you, it's for them. When you get a bunch of yeses, like that little script that you just did with me right there, I'm like, yeah, sure, fine. What? And then you get to a point, I'm like, fuck off. But with psychology wise, and look, Chris Voss is smarter than me, okay? Chris Voss from a psychology standpoint is smarter than me. He says, in order to get people to like open up and be willing to do something, like you got to get them to say no first, because now if you cold call me and I say no first, I'm now more in control, right? And so now I'm more open to what you're about to say because I feel a little bit more in control. Now, where I disagree with Chris Voss is how he intros. He says, hey, is this a good time or is this a bad time? Both are actually good intros. I don't like, is this a good time? Because the answer to that one's always no. Because it's like, and then what's your recourse? Oh, when is next week? Fucking, I'll send you an email. Like, that's bullshit, right? But I love, is this a bad, I don't love it. I like, is this a bad time? Well, no, not really. And now you got the no, and now I bring you to the next level.
Right.
So,
But what you're really saying, and I understand Chris's point, is that the opposite of no means yes, right? So even in that scenario, is now a bad time. Guess what you just used? A script.
See, yeah, I guess I look at structure versus script. And here's we might be talking nuances of the same approach, because I like the structure of, like, for instance, my structure is on the right-hand side here for everybody watching. It's a powerful intro. So pick whatever your intro is, right? Some people are a little bit better than others, but you want to split test a couple. So for instance, my intro, instead of, hey, how you doing today? Which I think is awful. It's, hey, Richard, thanks for taking my call. Do you have a couple of minutes?
Right. So here, yeah, go ahead.
But what I get with that is, so because if you call up and say, hi, this is John Barrows from, I'm automatically, this is like, it's a Pavlov dog scenario, right? Where it's like, this is a cold call. How do I get off the phone? And so now my experience is I'm not listening to what you're saying. All I'm trying to figure out is when you're going to take a breath so I can say, send me information, take me off your list, fuck off, right? But so pattern interrupt factor, and I know you got a lot of that in yours. I go, hey, Richard, thanks for taking my call. You got a couple of minutes? And 95% of the time what I get is, well, not really, but who is this? What do you want?
Right, which is good. They've opened the door.
Now what you just did is you just gave me permission to talk. And now, and I think we're both in agreement with this one, now you're listening. And now what I say is, well, real quick, the reason, this is John Barrows with J Barrows Sales Training. And the reason for my call today is, and that reason, that I think you're right, that can and should be scripted. As far as that attention grabber right there, what I call attention grabbers, it has to be less than 15 seconds, right? But yes, that's the part that I absolutely agree with you, should be scripted and should be tested, and everybody should be using.
So and I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, yesterday actually, because we were having this conversation. I got a whole bunch of notes of shit. I'm going to work with you on this script thing. First of all, there's a difference between a script and sounding scripted. I think people say when they don't like to have a script or use a script, it means because they think they're going to sound scripted. Well, guess how you don't sound scripted? By practice, right? So
my disdain for scripts is the historical, and this is probably where my feedback is coming from, is when they say that, like, so it's a tree, right? You say this, they say this, then say, say B. If they say B, then say A. Then if they say C, then say this. And then if you go there, because that's analysis paralysis, and it forces a rep to be too like, oh fuck, they said this, and now I have to go say that.
Hold on one second. Hold on, but not really. from a new rep perspective, you're right. But if I'm a seasoned rep, that's what the big book of objections is anyway.
Right.
Right. The big book of objections is, oh, when they say this, I say this. When they say this, I say this. Like, and you've scripted it out in your head and you've done it enough times repetitively that you can now not sound scripted and be authentic. Now, I'm not saying that if I walk into a room and I hand someone a script of my yes, 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 or my oh, wow script, that it works for everybody. Personalities do find the right script. That's the one thing I will say. And you need to find the one that works for you, right? Mm-hmm. But John, even you just laid out your script. You literally said, take
the call. You got a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Do you have a couple of minutes? The reason for this call is value statement. And you also went, is this a good time? Right? No. Is this a good time? Okay. Do you have a couple of minutes? Like, you've scripted out. And from a scripting perspective, is I think in cold calling, knowing those first 15 or 30 seconds, those first 70-ish words, what ends up happening once you've got it committed to memory is that then your brain can now be more open to thinking about what to say next when they throw out that first objection. Right. So for me, this is why I like scripting, and you can call it a pattern. You can call it an outline. You can call it whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't care. But don't tell me it's not a script. You even said yourself, hey, I want to hear what so-and-so is saying. Well, I'm willing to bet that so-and-so says the same stuff almost 80% of the time. I've sat in on your trainings, John, a couple of times. Right. And you and I, look, all trainers do this. We have scripts we follow. We do. I tell the same story every time. Right. But it is authentic and new because it's a new audience. That's why I want people to understand the value of the script. We watch TV shows not because of the dialogue, because of the good script and the ability for that actor to actually make it sound authentic to them. And that's what we're doing in sales. I guarantee you, that's exactly what we're doing. So I'll stop now and
I think we're like, again, I look at structure because I think we can play within that structure. So like, for instance, different intros work for different people. For, like, I shit on like, hey, how you doing today? But Gong data out there says that the best intro on every single cold call, you've been. Not, hey, how you doing today? But how have you been? So it's kind of like a mullet, like business in the front, party in the back. Hi, this is John Barrows with Jay Barrows Sales Training. How have you been? Right? And what that does is that fucks with people's heads, right? It's pattern interrupt. And it's like, I know I don't know that person, but then they were just super friendly. And then
I totally
usually you get, well, I guess I'm okay. How are you? Right? And then you say, well, yeah, and then they go into, well, this is John with Jay Barrows. So for me, I'll give you an example. Like this, the reason I like scripts, and maybe this is the difference here, is that a structure to me allows me to plug in a different intro, plug in a different reason, plug in a different call to action, right? And kind of tweak and test. Whereas a script to me is I'm testing this script versus this script versus this script. And that's where I have a little bit of a hard time having this, like, I'm going to say exactly this stuff because I need some flexibility here.
I'm not saying you can't have flexibility and be authentic, but I do think that it matters when you have a really good script. So I want to be, we're at 10:43. So I don't know if we can be able to go through all these, but what do you want to do?
What's your 20-second rule? What's your 27-second rule?
This one I actually like, and this came out of Connect and Sell, so we have to give them a ton of credit for this one. They tested this close to 100,000 times. They use it. I use this when I teach people, and they tend to gravitate to it, and it works really well. And it's really simple. It's a great pattern interrupt, as John was talking about, which is, hey, John, I know you weren't expecting, I'm sorry. Hey, John, this is Richard over at the Harris Consulting Group. I know you weren't expecting my call. I'd love to take 27 seconds to tell you the reason that I called. I believe we've discovered a breakthrough in blank, whatever your value statement is. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to take time to share that breakthrough with you and put some time on the calendar. Do you have your calendar available? You can go
27 seconds.
Their statistics say that they tried 25, 28, 30, 35 seconds. I think, and the thought is that when you say 30 seconds, you sound like everybody else. It's unbelievable. Like, we know you're not asking for 30 seconds. 28, sounded weird. 26 sounded weird. 27 sounds good. It's an odd number. It's a prime number, which humans like, and it's a 7. So that is the thought as to why that worked. But I trust it, and when you actually say this script, and I butchered it a little bit, but the context was strong. It's actually less than 27 seconds, right? Because everybody will kind of go, yeah, I'll give you 27 seconds, right? And if they don't, well then, okay, that script didn't work for that person.
Right. No, and I think that's, I mean, and that's about, to me, I think it goes back to quantifying what you're asking
Yep.
for, which I think is super important. By the way, here's a tip for everybody. Do not ask for meetings. Ask for time, sell time, right? Because when I say I want to meet with you, the number that pops into your head is 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and it's always a negative thing.
Nobody wants another meeting on their calendar.
So here's where, like, for instance, here's a tip for everybody who somebody picks up and says, look, I'm going into a meeting right now, or I'm super busy right now, call me later. Quantify what you're asking for. They do have time. They picked up the phone. If they didn't have any time at all, they would not have picked up the phone. So what you want to do, so what I do is I say, hey, thanks for taking my call. Do you got a couple of minutes? Well, not really, man. I'm walking into a meeting right now. I'm super busy, whatever. I go, look, I got 2 questions. I need 2 minutes of your time. At the end of that, you can tell me to go away if you want.
Yeah.
And I'll usually get, well, fine, what? Right. And then I bought myself those 2 minutes. And really what we're doing through the whole process of prospecting is we're selling time. We're selling the next step. So you have to earn that next step. And I know you're a huge fan, and I'm getting back into it with the upfront contract with Sandler, right? So my flow kind of goes like this, and this is my script, if you will, right? Which is, hey, Richard, thanks for taking my call. You got a couple of minutes? Not really, John, but who is this? What do you want? Well, this is John Barrows with J Barrows Sales Training. The reason for my call today is we're working with a lot of other VP of sales just like you, whose main priority is shortening the onboarding time. And they're actually using our online sales training portal to get their reps ramped and producing results immediately out of boot camp. And I was just wondering, what's the best way to get 10 to 15 minutes of your time so we can have that conversation and see if we can make the same impact for you? Now, usually what you're going to say, I'd say about 80% of the time is, well, you caught me now. What do you want to talk about? Right. And then I'll do the upfront contract and I'll say, you know what? I know you weren't expecting my call, so I'm going to be brief here. I got about 4 or 5 questions for you. After that, I'll share with you exactly what we're doing for companies like you and then from there, you can determine whether it makes sense to take a deeper dive. Is that cool? So that's the upfront contract. And then question.
Yeah. Sounds like
again, those questions.
Sounds like you have a script.
Structure. Just the flow. And so then I ask those questions again. They're persona driven, so they're not general. And then I share the components of my value proposition that are aligned with that. And then I close on, is this worth taking a deeper dive? Yep. That flow right there usually buys me time at each stage. It's less than 10 minutes on the phone, which most people have if they do pick up the phone, and it gives me a pretty good connect rate.
That's awesome. That's a really good script. I like it.
How do you, because you use the upfront contract with those 27 seconds, right? I got 27. That's pretty much what that is.
Yeah, I call it, I've shifted it to a respect contract because I don't like upfront contract from a phraseology perspective. It's a little dated and it doesn't acknowledge the transitions that need to occur. So that's why I've tweaked it. But yes, that is what you're doing. Yeah. And you're establishing rapport quickly, telling them that you know they don't trust you yet, and that you're trying to establish a little bit of trust to see if it's worth a little bit more trust. And that for me feels like a respect thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's respecting the prospect, but most importantly, it's also respecting the rep, right? Because it's teaching the rep how to respect themselves in a meaningful way. But yes, I do follow that.
One more point, because there was a question on this one as far as voicemails. What's your approach on, like, first of all, should you leave them? And then what's your approach to voicemails? When
I think I learned this from you 7 or 8 years ago when I first met you, which was, the only thing I know what happens when you don't leave a voicemail, nobody knows to get back to you, right? Like that's one of your scripts. I'm not going to let this go, John. And so I think that's absolutely true. I don't think you need to leave a voicemail every time. I think you can sort of do the double dial. I think you can do the ghost dial. I think you can sort of call twice during the day and then leave one at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Like there's all kinds of ways to decide how to use that voicemail, but it's a touch, right? Like I can't remember the last date. I don't remember if it was Sales Loft or Outreach, but somebody said it's like 13 touches just to get them to, take the first meeting, right? Or to get a hold of them effectively enough to set the meeting or even have the conversation. So that voicemail is a touch. And one of the things I've been testing, and it's been working well, and I don't know if you've done this, but I've been working with people to say, hey, I'm also going to send this in an email to you, in case email's faster for you.
Yeah, the double tap. That's an approach, right? So it's a double tap. You either call and you say, the reason for my call today is blah, blah, blah. And by the way, I'm going to send you an email too. And then right after, per my voicemail, same thing, or vice versa.
The one thing that I put in there is that as I put in that piece because I don't know which you prefer,
Yep.
Now I am making it about them.
Yep.
Right. So I'm trying to send this message to them that every time I touch them, I am trying to make it about them and what makes it easier for them. And over time, chipping at that, that should lead the person to go, this person's really, aggressive, or they're being consistent, but they were going to think you're nice because you're at least asking them how they want to do business.
Yeah.
And that is a huge, huge piece that I think that is often missed in all of these things. As I'm all about the mind game. So
totally. And actually my tip for everybody out there on voicemails is, it's the hardest thing that we do in the training. It's you actually leave your contact information at the end. You don't start with, hi, this is John Barrows from, because most of the time when somebody hears, hi, this is John Barrows from, they delete it, right? Because whatever, either I know you and I think I know you, or I don't know you and I don't care. So what I do is I go, hey, Richard, the reason for my call today is we're working on other VPs of sales just like you to show them how to drive these type of results, blah, blah, blah. And I was just wondering if you could call me back. My number is 617-529-7271. By the way, this is John Barrows with J Barrows Sales Training, 617-529-7271.
Yeah, totally agree. I 100% cannot disagree with you at all on that. This is the part that I think, look, and we all do this. We're in sales. If someone picks up the phone, they go, hi, this is Richard Harris. And we're like, fuck, I picked up the phone. Right. And we're in sales. Like, this is what we do. Right. And you literally said, hi, this is Richard calling from, right. There's 6 words that I just wasted and set them down the no mentality to release that cortisol so that they can start to reject me. So why would I do that? Like, that's the value of these things.
Let's hit on objection handling real quick, because I'm getting a few questions here. What's your whole, these are the objections we always get, right? Everybody gets the same fucking ones. So my whole mentality on objection handling is proactive versus reactive. You know this shit's coming. Have a decent answer for it. What's your mentality or approach on objection handling? Yeah,
so I totally agree with you, right? This is the big book of objections, right? And you can use this in other ways too, but you should have a line for each one of these, how you're going to handle it. But these are my favorite words when someone throws an objection, and I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll tell you why I think it works, which is, well, that's why I'm calling. If we say, hey, we're all set, that's why I'm calling. Most of the people we talk to are all set, but what they like to find out is this. I don't have time for this. Well, that's why I'm calling. I know you weren't expecting my call. Oh, this isn't a priority. Well, that's why I'm calling. It often isn't a priority. That's why we want to just have a quick 5-minute, whatever. Call me back in 6 months. Well, that's why I'm calling. I'm trying not to do that, because sometimes when people say that, they just don't want to do it. So tell me now. So that's why I'm calling. So one, it works because it buys you a split second to go, okay, what the fuck am I going to say next? Right. The other reason is that you're actually telling them that you agree with them. I'm telling you, John, you're right. And guess what happens when people think that you agree with them and they think that you're right? We like them a little better.
I like it.
I think this is a psychology thing. So anyway, go ahead.
What I would do is I would just Google this as part of my training, but literally Google best objection handling techniques, because the one that Richard just pointed out there to a certain degree is feel, felt, found, right? And you don't want to say feel, felt, found, right? Like, don't be an idiot. But you could say, hey, look, Richard, I get it. Most people I talk to are really not interested, but after spending 2 minutes on the phone with me, understanding this new whatever the hell we're doing, they realize that it's worth at least taking a deeper dive into. Could I get at least 2 minutes of your time? That's feel, felt, found.
So John, I gotta tell you, and I used to agree with you, and then I was in a training with a group, that one you mentioned earlier that I beat you on, which sorry, not sorry.
No, good for
you. But there was one of the reps who said, you know what? There's nothing wrong with feel, felt, found. People don't recognize it anymore, and I still use it. And I said, really? And so I said, well, all right, let's go do this. Yeah. And he did it on like 2 or 3 calls, and it worked. So I kind of agree with you. It feels too old school. It's old, it's big blue IBM shit, right? I get it. But I'm starting to crack that door back open, and just from a in the field perspective, I've seen and hear it start to work again. So I'm not opposed to it as much as you are, but
I guess maybe it's coming from the fact that I call into VPs of sales who are around our age, who know that shit, and they call it out all the time. So you're right. Probably another.
I think audience is correct. I think you're right. You got to know your audience 100%.
But I think, so here's some other techniques: feel, felt, found, clarification, which is by the way, the number one Gong data again here. 56%, the best sales reps on the planet answer objections 56% of the time with questions. Average sales reps answer from 32% of the time with questions. So usually it goes like this. I'm all set. Well, what do you mean by that, Richard? Like, what do you mean all set? Or you don't have time for this? What do you mean you don't have time for this? How much time are you spending sifting through spreadsheets looking for data? I'm going to tell you right now, you don't have time not to talk to me, right?
Right.
Or that what I like is the preemptive strike, which is, you know, the objection's coming and you just use it before they do.
Yep.
So it's, hey, Richard, I know you weren't expecting my call. I'm going to be brief here. That's the preemptive strike, right? Now, like, send me information, those type of things, you know, like, you can play around with different approaches to that. I usually say what, when, why. What information would you like to see? When would you like to see it, and why? Because people who are serious are answering those questions. If they're not, they won't. But then the critical part of send me information, by the way, fine, I'll send you information. When do you want to schedule a call so we can follow up on that information and see if it makes sense for us to take the next steps? And if they say next week, when next week? And then you do this with a really nice tone of voice too. You go, actually, you know what? You got your calendar in front of you? And then
Yep.
People who are genuinely serious will lock that in. People who aren't will just say, you know what, leave me alone. And then you could kind of say, look, if you're not interested, like, I get it. I don't want to bother you here. But any tips on send me information? Because I think that's the number one everybody always gets, because it's the ultimate blow off.
Yeah, right. Mine is like, hey, you know, I'm more than happy to send you some information. But just so you know, sometimes when people say that to me, they really do want me to send something. Other times they're just sort of saying it to try and tell me no politely. Can you let me know which one you want? Because you know what's going to happen after I send this email to you. I'm going to hound you for the next 6 weeks. And I know you don't want me to do that. So what would you really like? And I think people really actually, it
Humanizes it.
shocks them that someone's so direct about it, and they're really appreciative of it. And again, they turn around and actually like you for saying it, right? And you might get, you know, to the Chris Voss point from earlier, is you might get that, no, I really do want you to send it, right? Which is the positive no, right? So great, now what do you want me to send? So I want to find out the blow off first before I find out what they want to send, because what they want to send, now I'm still in that tug of war. And if someone's sitting here telling me, no, you know what, thanks, Richard, I appreciate you being so honest. Yeah, don't do it. Well, I don't want to spend time crafting some email, going to look for these 6 documents that they want that I know they're never going to read, right? I'd rather go on to the next person.
What about this one? This is one I actually don't have an answer for. It's when the receptionist or EA says, why don't you send me the information? Mm-hmm. I'll forward it along to whoever may be the right person to talk to. And if they're interested, they'll get back to you.
Right.
Any suggestions on how one?
I'm usually really polite with the person. I say, hey, you know what? Sounds like you're an expert at this job. Someone's trained and coached you really well. Here's what I think is happening. I'm going to send that to you. You may or may not forward it, right, which is fine. But nobody's ever going to get back to me. Would you say that's a fair thought for me? And they'll, you know, I sort of put them on the spot, because I also do have to sort of recognize, and I am conscious between the executive assistant versus a receptionist. Those are 2 different people, 2 different personas. If it's the receptionist, I could care less. The executive assistant, I might turn around and go, you know what? I'm totally happy to do that. What's it take for this to actually become something for him, right? What can I help you do? How do I help them do their job to support their boss? And trying to figure out a way through that in terms of working with them. Say, I'm happy to send this to you, but you know, a lot of times this is what happens. Yeah. Is that really going to happen? Because I don't, you know what, I'm going to keep calling back, and I don't want to bug you. You got more important things to do than take my call. So what would it take? Like, what kind of things motivate him to motivate you to look at this enough to just say, hey, you know what, this guy Richard called you, right? And I didn't put him through, but he was super nice to me and didn't want to bullshit us. So I think you ought to listen, right? That's what I'm driving for. I don't know if that's going to work, but that's what I'm driving for. And so that's my approach on that one.
I do the same. I empathize, right? I really do. I'm like, look, what I'll do is when I go through my little thing and the reason for my call and all that other stuff, and they say, look, why don't you send me information? I'll be like, you know what, look, maybe you can help me then, right? And then you kick down to like a peer level with them to say, hey, look, I'm not trying to waste their time. You guys fit a real similar profile, some other clients that we've done some really cool work for. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. So, you know, what would you suggest I do? Or maybe is there somebody else in the organization I might be able to have a better conversation with? And
right.
I usually feel them relax a little bit. Or what I'll do is when they say, send me the information, and I'll forward it over to you, whoever may. And if another little thing that I do to get them to empathize a little bit is say, hey, look, okay, say that happens and I don't hear from somebody in about a week. What would you do if you were me?
Yeah, totally agree. Like,
it's a little awkward.
Right. But getting them to solve your problem, right? You know, again, back to sort of Voss and his thoughts.
All right. So look, we're up onto it. We didn't get to any of these fucking questions, man. We're gonna do another one of these because
Really.
we blasted through a whole bunch of shit. Hopefully, people got some value out of this. We're gonna compile all these questions
Yep.
and try to answer them kind of individually. So I'm gonna have our team actually rip through all these and find people, and we'll send out direct, answers to some of
I
them.
said we just do another session where we just roll through these questions.
Yeah, I think it's another good one, right? So, but we will get back to everybody here. Just in respect of everybody's time here, hopefully y'all got some value out of this. Richard, if you have any questions like that really we didn't hit on, and you like today or tomorrow you want an answer, there's our contact information. Easiest way for me, and I'll defer to Richard, but easiest way if you want a direct answer from me on something very specific, my handle there, John M. Barrows, Snapchat or Instagram, hands down the fastest way I'll get back to you. Or
Such a
email.
millennial.
I'm just, hey, in general, man, I got ADD, right? Or I'm sorry, I got OCD, so I have to clean up all that shit so I can get back to you right there. Richard, what's the best way to connect with you?
Literally, and I do this a lot. Call me. Like, fucking pick up the phone and call me. Like, we're in sales, right? Text me, call me, find me on LinkedIn or email me. I'll do whatever you want, but like, that's why I put my number out there. So.
Love it. The last thing I'll say, and this is just a shameless plug here. I wrote a book. I want to be in sales when I grow up. 100% of profits go to charity. Everybody go to iwanttobeInsaleswhenIgrowup.com or find it on Amazon. It's to help elevate the profession of sales and get more women into sales and donate to charity. So if you want to do some good work there, help me spread the word here and spread some humanity to this whole place. Chris, did I hear you chime in for a second?
Yeah, that was me, Kelly. Hey, just a quick reminder to thank the sponsor that helped make this possible for today.
All right, which ones? Who sponsored this? Everybody?
Everybody.
All right, so Sales Loft, Lead IQ, what else? Costello, Work Ramp, and who was the other one? Blanking. Kelly, help me out. Dialpad, thank you. Shit. All 5 of those sponsors, thank you so much for making this happen. We'll have all their information on the follow-up emails with this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to the sponsors as well. And I know people at each of those companies, and I can tell you that they are good people. If you're looking for their services, they are really, really trustworthy people, and they really do care about their customers. So
that is, by the way, that is the only reason that we partner with them. Is number one is ethos. If you like, you have to know about this profession and care about this profession for us to partner with you. Then it's ecosystem. Do they fit in our world? And then, as far as the partnership is concerned, but these are great companies. Go check them all out. Thank you so much. And thanks, Kelly, for reminding me on that one. And hopefully everybody got some value out of this. Like I say at the end of all my podcasts here, if you do nothing else today, go make somebody happy. Go make somebody smile. Because even if you had a shitty day, if you make somebody smile.
John, I got one question.
What's that?
You believe in scripts now?
I still believe in structure, my friend.
All right, we'll save it for round 2, brother.
All right, have a great one.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody, have a great one.
Bye.